origins, and background of the Fallout world. The world of Fallout is not merely a vision of a post-apocalyptic future. It is the outcome of an alternate timeline, a branch of history that diverged from our own reality. That divergence began after World War II, when global events, instead of leading to the Cold War as we know it, pushed humanity in a completely different direction. One where extreme patriotism, fear of communism, and blind faith in technological progress became the cornerstones of culture and society. In this timeline, American society never escaped the mindset, politics, and cultural identity of the 1950s. The so-called Golden Age of America, with its spotless suburban families, gleaming automobiles, domestic service robots, and cheerful swing music echoing from the radio, endured for centuries. The American dream itself became distorted. Rather than striving for freedom and creativity, civilization devolved into a materialistic society obsessed with comfort and technological superiority. Within this atmosphere, fear of communism evolved into a chronic national disease. When the Soviet Union weakened, the United States quickly found a new enemy, China, a rapidly rising economic and military power. Their confrontation was not only ideological, but also a battle for energy, the lifeblood of modern civilization that was slowly running dry beneath the earth. Thus, the world entered an era in which nations, corporations, and individuals alike became consumed by the pursuit of dwindling resources, especially oil. Technology, instead of liberating humanity, became a tool of control and warfare. Breakthrough inventions, ranging from autonomous robots and nuclear-powered energy systems to the first power armor, made humankind believe it was entering a new golden age. Yet beneath this illusion of progress lay an unending dependency on energy, a civilization bound by its own creations, and a moral decay that quietly eroded its soul. The Fallout Society mirrors a world where militarism and blind faith in government replaced human rights and moral conscience. Citizens were taught that everything existed in the name of national security, that weapons and machines were humanity's salvation. Meanwhile, megacorporations like Robco, Vault-Tec, and Poseidon Energy manipulated the government, turning war itself into a lucrative business empire. And in the cruelest irony of all, it was humanity's belief that technology could protect it that ultimately led to its destruction. In the world of Fallout, mankind did not perish from weakness, but from its overconfidence in its own power. A dazzling, high-tech civilization, shining on the surface yet rotting within, was finally consumed by its own fear, paranoia, and insatiable greed. In the end, it was not the bombs that destroyed the world, but the people who built them. Global decline and the resource wars. After decades of living in the illusion of an eternal age of prosperity, humanity in the Fallout universe began to face a grim truth. Energy, the foundation of all progress, was running out. By the mid-21st century, global oil reserves had declined dramatically, triggering an economic, political, and military crisis that spread across the planet. The world's superpowers began to blame, sanction, and invade one another in a desperate struggle for survival. In 2051, the United States accused Mexico of destabilizing its southern border and imposed harsh economic sanctions. The resulting political collapse gave the U.S. a pretext to invade Mexican territory, claiming it was necessary to secure vital oil supplies. Meanwhile, the once prosperous oil fields of Texas, symbols of American energy dominance, had long since run dry, leaving behind only barren wells and empty pipelines. Across the globe, Europe and the Middle East were drawn into a vicious spiral of war over dwindling oil resources. As energy prices soared, the European Commonwealth, an expanded version of the European Union, deployed troops into the Middle East to seize control of the remaining oil wells. This brutal conflict became known as the Resource Wars, the beginning of humanity's final descent into chaos. 8 years later, when the Middle Eastern oil fields were completely depleted, Europe fell into anarchy. By 2060, the European Commonwealth had collapsed, its member nations torn apart by civil wars, famine, and total energy failure. Meanwhile, tensions between the United States and the People's Republic of China reached their breaking point. The last two global superpowers, both utterly dependent on oil, were heading toward inevitable confrontation. The U.S. soon realized that Alaska, the frozen northern frontier, still possessed a few operational oil reserves, the last major source of energy on Earth. Its strategic importance was undeniable. The U.S. rapidly militarized Alaska to defend its interests, while China viewed the region as a matter of survival. In 2066, China launched a full-scale invasion of Alaska, marking the beginning of the Sino-American War, the longest and most devastating conflict in human history. The war raged for 10 brutal years, transforming the planet into a proving ground for advanced weaponry and technological warfare. During this time, the United States unveiled its greatest military achievement, the power armor, a mechanical exoskeleton that turned ordinary soldiers into walking tanks. It also fielded autonomous combat robots to maintain its dominance. China, in turn, accelerated the development of tactical nuclear weapons and biological warfare programs, escalating the conflict to terrifying new levels. The world spiraled out of control. Nations collapsed, corporations replaced governments, and humanity lost all faith in peace. From 2050 to 2077, civilization devoured itself in a cycle of war, energy crises, and moral decay. And as Alaska became the symbol of humanity's final war for oil, no one realized the ultimate truth. The real enemy was never China or America, but humanity's own greed and ignorance. The Sino-American War and the birth of power armor. In 2066, the world stood on the edge of the abyss. After decades of energy crises, the last two remaining superpowers, the United States and the People's Republic of China, finally went to war. The objective was no longer honor or ideology, but oil, the final lifeblood of human civilization. This conflict would forever be remembered as the Sino-American War, the beginning of the end. Desperate to survive, China invaded Alaska, a frozen wasteland rich in resources and home to the last known oil reserves on Earth. Waves of Chinese soldiers in snow armor swept across the icy plains, seizing oil fields, burning the city of Anchorage, and leaving devastation in their wake. The United States could not stand idly by. It responded with the full might of its industry, science, and military. Millions of young men and women were drafted, the brightest minds were mobilized, and the defense budget soared to levels unseen in human history. In its thirst for victory, America created a legendary weapon, the power armor, a mechanical exosuit that transformed ordinary soldiers into living engines of war. Developed through the T-45 and later T-51B military programs, the power armor became more than just a piece of equipment. It was the ultimate symbol of American power and pride. Soldiers encased in power armor could withstand artillery fire, operate in irradiated environments, and fight tirelessly for days. They were known as the Iron Soldiers, warriors of steel. Meanwhile, China retaliated with biological weapons and stealth technology, turning the war into a decade-long nightmare. Millions perished. Borders vanished. Both nations teetered on the brink of collapse. By 2076, the United States annexed Canada, using it as a strategic military staging ground for the war. Widespread resistance and protests erupted across Canadian territories, but the U.S. government dismissed it as a necessary sacrifice for world peace. Armed with superior technology and power armor divisions, America slowly gained the upper hand. U.S. forces pushed deep into mainland China, burning factories, leveling cities, and crippling infrastructure. In early 2077, they reclaimed Alaska, marking the turning point of the war. The phrase "victory at Anchorage" filled every newspaper and broadcast screen. Americans celebrated. The government declared triumph. The nation believed that peace had finally returned. But it was only the calm before the storm. Beneath the illusion of victory, thousands of nuclear warheads lay silent, awaiting a single command. And then on October 23, 2077, the world ended. The bombs fell. In just 2 hours, civilization was erased from the face of the earth. The Sino-American War had ended. But there were no victors, only ashes, ruins, and a single eternal truth echoing across the wasteland. War. War never changes. Doomsday, the Great War, 2077. October 23rd, 2077. A date humanity will never forget, though no one remains strong enough to remember it. It was the day the world ended, a global nuclear war that lasted only 2 hours. In that brief span of time, the United States, China, and the remaining world powers unleashed their atomic arsenals, turning every nation, every city, into a burning sea of radioactive fire. No one knows who launched first. No one cared why. Because when the first bombs fell, the line between justice and evil vanished forever. In that moment, the sky blazed brighter than daylight. But it was not the sun. It was the flash of thousands of nuclear warheads launched simultaneously. Cities like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Beijing, London, and Moscow were obliterated in seconds, reduced to shadows burned into the earth. The air turned to fire. The ground boiled. Radiation-laced winds swept across continents, incinerating forests, boiling oceans, and transforming Earth into a living hell. In just 120 minutes, civilization, the product of thousands of years of human progress, collapsed completely. Homes, schools, hospitals, churches, all reduced to ash. Humanity, once proud to call itself the pinnacle of evolution, was now nothing more than terrified survivors running through the ruins of a burning world. Yet some had prepared. Beneath the United States lay 122 massive underground shelters, known as vaults, constructed by the Vault-Tec Corporation under Project Safehouse. Officially, they were described as civil defense shelters designed to protect citizens in the event of nuclear war. But that was only half the truth. In reality, the vaults were giant social and genetic experiments. The U.S. government, in collaboration with the Enclave, a secret cabal of politicians, generals, and corporate magnates, had turned these sanctuaries into laboratories for human testing. Each vault was a cruel experiment of its own design. Some were cut off from all communication, others forced their residents to sacrifice their overseer each year, and some were filled with experimental drugs and genetic mutations. Their true goal was not to save humanity, but to reshape it, to study how humans might adapt, evolve, or be controlled, and to prepare for a future beyond Earth should the planet become uninhabitable. Meanwhile, those unlucky enough to be left on the surface struggled to survive in the nuclear wasteland. They hid in the ruins of cities, underground tunnels, and any shelter that could shield them from the deadly radiation. When the radioactive storm finally subsided, a new world emerged. Barren, scorched, and broken. The seas had turned to acid, the forests to dust, and the surviving creatures into ghouls, mutants, and monsters twisted by radiation. The old world was dead. But deep within the vaults, beneath the ashes of civilization, a new era was beginning. One where humanity would have to learn to survive all over again, and where the relics of the past would determine the shape of the future. From that moment onward, human history entered a new chapter. The post-nuclear era, the wasteland age. And from the ashes of nuclear fire, humanity would rise again, changed forever. Vaults, the Enclave, and the dark secrets of the American government. After the nuclear holocaust of 2077, when the Earth was scorched and the sky turned into a shroud of radioactive night, the titanium doors of Vault-Tec's shelters sealed shut, cutting off the remnants of humanity from the dying world above. Inside those 122 colossal underground vaults, tens of thousands believed they had been chosen to preserve civilization. Yet, they had no idea that the very sanctuaries they fled to for salvation would become prisons of inhuman experimentation. According to the classified archives of Project Safehouse, the official purpose of Vault-Tec was to preserve humanity in the event of a global nuclear war. But behind the veil of patriotism and secrecy lay another truth. A hidden agenda known as the Enclave Initiative. The Enclave was not a public institution. It was a shadow alliance formed by the most powerful figures in America: corporate magnates, military generals, politicians, and elite scientists. They believed that when the world inevitably collapsed, only they, the chosen elite, deserved to survive. In secret, the Enclave controlled Vault-Tec and repurposed the entire Vault network into a vast system of social, genetic, and psychological laboratories. Each vault was a cruel, isolated experiment designed to observe human behavior under extreme conditions. Vault 11 forced its residents to sacrifice their overseer every year or face total annihilation. Vault 87 became the testing ground for the forced evolutionary virus, FEV, turning humans into monstrous super mutants. Vault 12 was deliberately sealed imperfectly, allowing radiation to seep in, mutating its inhabitants into ghouls, decaying yet immortal beings. Vault 111, where the protagonist of Fallout 4 would one day awaken, was designed to test long-term human cryogenic suspension. The data gathered from these vaults was intended to aid the Enclave in completing Project Eden, a plan to create a new breed of perfect humans. Radiation immune, obedient, and engineered to rebuild civilization on Earth. Or perhaps beyond it. When the bombs fell, The enclave's upper echelons escaped to secret bunkers, from the underground facilities beneath Washington, D.C., to the Poseidon oil rig in the Pacific Ocean. There, they survived, preserving caches of advanced weaponry, data, and technology. To them, the survivors on the surface, whether human, ghoul, or mutant, were nothing more than inferior species, destined to be exterminated so that a pure world could rise again. 2 centuries later, the enclave still endures, the decaying remnant of the old United States government. They wear the stars and stripes, claiming to be the legitimate government of the United States. But behind that flag lies nothing more than the ghost of an empire that destroyed itself. They possess cutting-edge technology, vertibird gunships, advanced power armor superior to all others, and weapons capable of annihilation. Yet their humanity, their soul, died long ago with the old world. Deep within the tunnels of Vault Tech, dark secrets remain buried, waiting for the day they will be uncovered. And when the vault doors open once more, humanity will face a question as haunting as the wasteland itself. Do we truly deserve to be saved? The first remnants and the rise of the new California Republic, NCR. 2 centuries after Doomsday, October 23, 2077, Earth was no longer the vibrant blue planet it once was. It had become a desolate wasteland, known simply as the Wasteland. The planet had ceased to be a place fit for life, yet humanity's instinct to survive burned brighter than despair itself. From the ashes of radiation and ruin, mankind began to crawl out of the darkness, reborn amidst the wreckage of the very civilization it had destroyed. On the western coast of the former United States, in what was once California, generations after the Great War, survivors from the underground vaults began to emerge. They returned to a world unrecognizable, cities buried in dust, rivers poisoned by radiation, mutated creatures stalking the land, and raider gangs roaming like wild beasts. Amid this chaos, Vault 15, one of the first vaults to open, became the cradle of a new civilization. From the first settlers of Vault 15, a small community was born, Shady Sands. It was a rare oasis in the harsh wasteland where humanity began to rebuild, constructing homes, cultivating the land, restoring law, and rediscovering trade. Over generations, Shady Sands grew stronger, a beacon of hope, order, and faith in humanity. Under the guidance of visionary leaders, Shady Sands was officially renamed the New California Republic, NCR. Its founding ideals were noble: to restore the lost values of the old United States: liberty, justice, democracy, and prosperity. The NCR built a government modeled after the old American system, with 3 branches of power: public elections, taxation, and its own constitution and legal code. From a humble village, the NCR expanded rapidly, absorbing hundreds of settlements and towns. At its peak, its population exceeded 700,000 citizens, an astonishing number in the post-war world. The Republic became a symbol of stability and hope, even issuing its own currency and maintaining the largest standing army in the wasteland. But as the eternal truth of the Fallout world declares, war never changes. With power came greed. The NCR began to expand aggressively, forcing smaller communities to join, imposing heavy taxes, and interfering in regional politics. They proclaimed peace and unity. Yet in practice, they were building an empire, repeating the same mistakes of the old America that had destroyed itself centuries before. Still, amid the repeating cycles of ambition and collapse, the new California Republic remained the brightest light in a shattered world. Proof that no matter how many times civilization fell, humanity would always rise again, still dreaming of freedom, order, and a better tomorrow. From the small settlement of Shady Sands, a nation was born, but the true cost of civilization was yet to be tested in the wars to come. The bloody empire and the slave ideology of Edward Sallow, Caesar. While the new California Republic, NCR, sought to rebuild democracy amidst the ruins of civilization, far to the east beyond the Colorado River, another power was rising: Caesar's Legion. It was not a nation, nor a movement, but a blood-soaked empire forged from the ashes of humanity by a single man, Edward Sallow, the one who would crown himself Caesar. Edward Sallow had once been a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian organization of scholars and doctors who wandered the wasteland, preserving knowledge and aiding communities after the Great War. But during his expeditions into Arizona, Sallow encountered something that shattered the idealist within him: Among the savage, chaotic tribes of the region, he came to a grim realization. Mankind did not need knowledge. It needed absolute order, enforced by an iron hand. Obsessed with this revelation, Salo began studying the ancient Roman Empire, its systems of power, military strategy, laws, and faith. He believed that within its cruelty lay the only force capable of uniting the post-apocalyptic world. And thus, Edward Salo died, and Caesar was born. Caesar began conquering one tribe at a time. He wielded not only weapons, but also ideology and fear. He taught discipline and strategy, but also turned men into slaves of war. Those who resisted were executed. Those who submitted were enslaved or drafted as soldiers. Over the course of 2 decades, Caesar united more than 80 tribes, creating a vast militaristic empire stretching from Arizona to the Mojave Desert. Under a blood-red banner emblazoned with a 2-headed black bull, a symbol of dominance and absolute power, the legion functioned as an ancient war machine, driven by fear and blind devotion. Women were reduced to slaves, men were trained as Spartan-like warriors. Caesar proclaimed himself the living embodiment of Mars, the Roman god of war, and taught that the Great War was a divine punishment from the gods upon humanity's weakness. His ideology was brutally simple, yet terrifyingly effective. Democracy breeds weakness. Compassion breeds chaos. Only absolute strength can bring order. From that belief, the legion showed no mercy, no diplomacy. They burned their enemies alive, crucified rebels, and treated death as the ultimate proof of loyalty. Eventually, Caesar's path of conquest brought him to the Mojave wasteland, where the NCR's expanding borders clashed with his own empire. 2 forces, 2 opposing ideals, freedom and democracy versus tyranny and domination, met in battle at Hoover Dam, the last great source of energy in America. The First Battle of Hoover Dam claimed thousands of lives. Though the legion was defeated, Caesar's empire did not fall. Instead, he swore vengeance, promising to return with tens of thousands of warriors to purify the world in blood and fire.